A couple of days ago, I started cutting in this property line, fence line here. And you can see I was trying to get up here and line up with our existing fence line. And we had this surveyed, so I've got some survey markers here to target and know where I'm headed. So we're trying to get this whole property line sorted out so that it's nice and straight and accessible. And we're going to try to run some fencing down this. But I also have to kind of maintain a little bit of a ditch on this road. We've got a few spots along the way here where there's a pretty heavy drainage of runoff that comes across the surface. And that filters out into my land and into my road in several different fingers. So what we're going to do is, on the property line, we're going to run a ditch through so that it runs down this road all the way down and can get down to our main, I guess, ditch along the road and get into the creek quicker. This spot here with these junipers, you can see all those rocks and boulders in there. And that happens to be the spot where most of it channels together and crosses through those junipers and makes it into that pipe that I put in last year to cross underneath this driveway. And then it exits right here at the fence line. One of the big things we've got to do with this is we've got to try to get that ditch cut so that everything here channels correctly, because that's the main flow, but there's a few fingers right over in here that also come down and trickle in. And so we're going to try to exit the property right there in the corner and get down onto that road ditch sooner. And having a ditch along this property line will give it a place to go. So as it comes and it's subsurfacing and soaking through there, it can hit that ditch and create the low point and the exit, I guess, for the water to exit the ground and be able to come down the road line and make it to the exit point. Now that I've got most of the official cut in place, I need to just refine it a little bit. And then that's one reason I brought the I-beam up here, is I'm going to use that to kind of level and smooth the road surface. And then I'm going to also use my skinniest ditching bucket there to run the ditch down that property line and make room for it so we have enough room. Now, this is only going to be wide enough when it's all finished. I won't need to come back through this property line fence with the excavator ever again. That's not necessarily the intention, but I want it wide enough if I need to come up with the tractor again, I can. So we'll put the ditch in and we'll have the fence on the property line and then have room in the road width to keep the road open and accessible for maintaining the fence. Okay, I had made my rough cut the other day and kind of just flattened it out with the blade on the excavator. And the cut was pretty good, but I did need to refine it. I do need to come in here and just finish cleaning it out, getting the finished width, but the access is there and everything's good that way. So now on this uphill side, I'm starting at the top and working my way down, but up here you can see a closer finished product. So this is more like what it's going to finish out like. I'll have the full width of the road cut, and then down this edge I'll cut the ditch last thing. But I want to come through first and make sure that my width is appropriate and my flatness and compaction on the downhill side is good. The property line actually comes in right here. We had gone on the old fencing when we did that fence, and the old fencing was off by a little ways. We're now straightening this out as we do this cut, and then probably sometime in the future we'll refine this cut out here and try to get that line brought into appropriate placement. But you can see with that I-beam, it sure makes a nice flat, smooth space. And all of this is going to grow back in with grasses and wild and everything. Now I'm just refining, taking the whole elevation basically and just bringing it down a little bit so I have material to get the width and get farther out there. So I'll just keep plugging away at that for another day or so, get down to the bottom with it and get all the flatness and width done. In fact, I'll probably do that. I'll probably just work it all the way down, getting that elevation and get it really nice and flat. And then I'll come back up to the top and start pulling the ditch line that's going to keep any of this runoff from being a problem for me anymore. This is all a pretty dry zone, so it doesn't have too much clay in this section. What we end up with is you get down very far and you get into this kind of sandstone looking stuff, and that's just porous, so the water goes down through it. You can see the sandstone just crumbles up rather than continuing to or hit this road and try to trickle out and then subsurface again and keep soaking. That'll fix a lot of that, so it should be quite nice when it's done. Okay, we've got the road all finished up there, and the ditch is in for drainage. We've got it nice and wide so that we can get our fence posts in there and still have room to come up along the side of the fence and maintain it and manage it. Now down here, I still need to do a little bit more work at the finish down here. What I'm having to do is manage the water that's coming out of the hill up here. So I've got to stay kind of at the clay layer because that's where it saturates down to the clay and then runs through that soil at that point. So everything gets soggy. And a year or two ago, this was just swamp ground. This whole section where I've got all my trailers parked and everything. And if I can keep this ditch kind of down near the clay layer, then everything coming off the mountain, out of the mountain, is going to sub out, hit the ditch and run out, and it won't soak into the ground here. So I need to keep the ditch going, but while I do that, I also need to get the ditch down to the road elevation by the time we get out here. I don't know if you can see, but just right here is a ditch that runs along the side of the road. So I need to be able to get down to that elevation through here. And it would be better if I can do it, kind of stage it down to it rather than having to just dig straight down. So I need to kind of open a little belly through here and move the dirt around and that kind of thing to get it finished. And then it's just a whole bunch of fencing after that. So for now, we'll get started up here so that we can continue that fence line and get it back into place. We had to take a bunch of it out. Oh, you can see it's kind of in place still here for a ways. And then about where that big tall juniper is next to the road right here, that's about where the fence is cut and ends. So we'll get it down here a ways where we know we're solid, clear down into here and tie back to that existing fence for now until we can get this all disconnected, moved, shaped, cut in, and then finish this. I have to be a little bit cautious up here because the range cows are up now, and so they tend to blow through their fencers up there or jump over the cattle guard, and they want to come down along the road, and if they see an opening in this fence down here, they'll beeline right into my place. So kind of have to be a little bit cautious with how I open that. Need to open it only long enough to be able to close it. I don't want to leave it open overnight so that I'm having to deal with the risk of cows coming in the morning early or late at night when they're browsing. So at any rate, this is good enough for now to get us moving forward. You see all the rock in there, and I just try to move it down and put the dirt on top. Eventually this will grow in pretty quickly. Next year or two it'll grow into native vegetation, broadleaf stuff, and then eventually some grasses and things like that. And as we end up having animals out here, they'll walk it, poop on it, everything, and it'll grow in. It'll be all right. Finally got that part done. And that's kind of how this time of year is for us. I end up kind of having to bounce around between projects. There's just not enough time to stick at one project to the completion. I have to make certain stages of progress on each one and kind of work my way through them based on what the time and what the availability is. It's just how it goes. So anyway, that's looking good. Now we got to go spend a bunch of money on fencing. That's the name of the game.